need a bigger boat.
Hey, Cassettes, and welcome back to the Black Case Diaries podcast.
Hey,
what's up? We're three old sharks learning everything we can about movies and TV and hopefully teaching you in the process. I'm Marcy.
I'm Robin.
And I'm Adam.
What's up?
Hey.
For a second there, I was going to say, name's Bruce.
In March of 1975, an audience in Dallas, Texas sat in tense silence during the first screening of a new film from Universal. The director, a young man in his late 20s, stood nervously by the exit, ready to duck into the lobby should the event go sideways. For the last year, his life had been completely dedicated to the 2-hour and 10-minute monstrosity before them. A motion picture that started production without a complete script and that ended up taking 3 times longer to film than scheduled. Each day, he faced the prospect of losing his job and saying goodbye to his lifelong filmmaking dreams. All of that culminated there, in that theater in Dallas, in front of the first audience that would ever lay eyes on the finished product. And if the film was a financial failure, it surely meant the end of this young man's career. Oh boy.
It's funny because we know.
Yeah. The director was Steven Spielberg, and the film was Jaws, the 1970s aquatic thriller that many credit as the first blockbuster. Partway through the screening, the audience started to have audible reactions to the film. Soon they erupted in screams and even began cheering after major sequences. Spielberg even noticed a man in the audience get up from his seat and run toward the bathroom, only for him to vomit on the lobby floor. By the film's end, the audience stood and erupted in applause, a response that no one, especially not the film's embattled crew and producers, could have ever expected.
Wow.
He was too scared to sit down. He was standing at the front of the theater, like where the curtain is, with one of the producers. And they were both standing there. You know, because they were ready to just run. They said the first time they heard a scream, the first scream, they said, they like grabbed each other because they were like, oh my God, we did
It's
it.
over.
Like, oh my
This
God.
is it.
Oh my
We've
God.
convinced the audience.
Yeah, we did it. We did it. And then the guy got up and vomited.
Yeah.
Because
Crazy.
it was because of the scene where Alex Kinter, the little boy, gets eaten, and Steven Spielberg even thought, "Oh no, like I went too far. Like I made, I made this. It was too much, you know." And but then that guy got, he threw up, and then he went back and
Came
sat back
back.
down. Yeah,
Yeah, he's like, I'm still not going to miss it.
Universal gave Jaws an unprecedented, simultaneous, wide release in theaters all across the country. It became the highest-grossing movie of its time, turning Steven Spielberg into a household name. It was a film unlike anything anyone had ever seen. A Hitchcock-esque thriller masquerading as a monster movie. It launched a film franchise and inspired an entire generation of young filmmakers. Nearly 50 years after its release, Jaws is still widely considered to be an essential film that changed the course of movie history. So today, we're headed back to Amity Island and diving deep into the history of Jaws.
Ugh, I'll stay in the lifeguard tower.
I'll stay in the
you guys
sandy
don't want to
beach.
You guys don't want to dive. You don't know.
I'll make some sandcastles here on the shore. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I wonder if I could like combine how many minutes of references I've seen.
Yeah.
Would it be more than the actual movie?
Really?
Like, have I watched more references to Jaws than the length of Jaws?
Right.
I feel like yes.
Great. Yeah.
Because it is referenced in nearly everything you can think of. There's been a Jaws reference in it. And that is a testament to how big of a deal the movie is. Finding Nemo, the shark is named Bruce.
Yes.
That's a Jaws reference.
You're right.
Not only is it great white, but it's like it's weaved throughout the tapestry of Hollywood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like many popular movies, Jaws was of course based on a book. Peter Benchley had not previously published any books before he wrote his famous breakout novel about a shark terrorizing a Long Island resort. He claimed that the idea came to him one day when he was looking out over the beach and wondered what would happen if a monstrous great white shark lurked in the water. Having grown up in Nantucket, Benchley was familiar with the predatory animal. Tom Congdon, an editor for Doubleday, asked the author if he had any book ideas, so Benchley shared his shark concept with him. He wrote up a 4-page outline before eventually spending 18 months writing and revising the final novel. Bantam Books purchased the rights for $575,000, and the book was published in 1974. Benchley and his editor, Thomas Congdon, could not agree on a name, and the manuscript remained without a title until just before publication. Other names that were discussed were The Stillness in the Water and Leviathan Rising. Those are both pretty dang cool names. Not gonna lie. Finally, Benchley said to call it Jaws because it is short, fits the jacket, and it is the only thing that means anything. Producers Richard Zanuck and David Brown purchased the film rights to the book before it was published, based on early samples they had seen of Benchley's work. One of the stipulations in the purchase was that Benchley would be offered a chance to write the screenplay. Much to the author's surprise, the book became a bestseller while the Jaws movie was being produced. Of course, this added pressure to Spielberg to make a film that lived up to the expectations set by the book.
Isn't that funny?
Oh boy.
It's like he had the pressure to make a movie that, lived up to a book that was already a bestseller and was already popular. But to us, most of us don't even know that it's based on a book.
I know,
right,
yeah.
It's true, it's true. The iconic original art made famous as the movie's poster was the original paperback book. It was created by Roger Castell, a prolific illustrator who was also responsible for the iconic poster art for The Empire Strikes Back. That is wild. And honestly, it probably is the most iconic, at least that I can think of, the most iconic movie poster ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. God, I love it. I love it so much. I've always loved that art.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and I wish wish movie art still looked like that.
Yeah,
beautiful painted imagery with like the because like you just have the swimmer on top and the shark just beneath, and it's just that's all you need.
The ending of the book version of Jaws differs from the film, mostly due to production complications that forced script rewrites. The biggest change, however, is the manner in which the shark dies. In the film, the shark famously explodes due to a compressed air canister. In the book, the shark succumbs to harpoon injuries.
Mm-hmm. So, I think the movie actually has a scene that is reminiscent of the way the shark dies in the book. There's a scene in the movie where these two fishermen, or these two shark hunters, are out on the water, and they, tie the boat to the dock, and then the boat takes the dock with them, and essentially serves up one of them like on a plate for this for this shark.
Yeah.
And he falls off the platform, and as the shark is trying to basically turn around and come back to eat him, his friend is trying to pull him up into the, and this is a very tense scene, and a lot of anticipation of, and he ultimately he survives. It's one of those moments though where you're just like, oh my god, and it's very
get up.
Yeah. And I think that ultimately it would have been too weak as like a final scene.
Sure.
Because what happens in the book is that Quint harpoons the shark by hand, and then the rope of the harpoon wraps around his leg and pulls him into the water, and then he drowns. He doesn't get eaten by the shark. He drowns because of that. The shark is still alive, and Brody is a sitting duck just floating on a piece of debris from the destroyed ship.
The boat still is destroyed.
Yeah, okay. And he's just out there basically on a piece of debris, and the shark comes toward him, and Brody like closes his eyes because he's just like, "This is it. I'm gonna get eaten by the shark."
Yeah,
you know.
Yep.
But then the shark dies before it gets to him, and that's how the book ends. Which
is a great book ending.
Yes, for a book ending, that's great. But like for the movie, it would have been a little anticlimactic.
Yeah. And just one of the best lines.
Yeah.
Smile, you son of a. It's so good.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Smile, you son of a.
Yeah, I think Spielberg was like, man, I've got this audience in there for 2 hours, hanging on like everything I have. Like, I need to give them something. If they've believed everything else, they'll believe me blowing it up with it.
Yes, yes, it's true. Known today as possibly the most famous director in Hollywood, it's difficult to imagine a time when Spielberg wasn't famous. He started his career by making independent short films and eventually started directing episodes of TV series like Rod Serling's Night Gallery and Columbo. Spielberg directed a few made-for-TV movies before landing his first major motion picture, The Sugarland Express, starring Goldie Hawn. I want to say, so one of his live-action film shorts that he did was called Amblin. And that's why he named the studio Amblin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like just a 3-minute short film. I don't think there's any dialogue in it.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he actually, he had a couple made for TV movies. One was a horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We talked about this one.
Yeah. He was first made aware of Jaws when it was in its earliest stages of development. And another director, Dick Richards, had already been offered the film. Producer Richard Zanuck let Spielberg read the script anyway to get his opinion. The producers ultimately decided to change directors because Richards reportedly kept referring to the film's main antagonist as a whale instead of a shark, which frustrated and concerned the producers.
Yeah, that would for me too.
I mean, I totally understand, and we'll probably talk more about how much this references Moby Dick.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, come on.
That's probably why I kept saying.
That's what I'm thinking. Like he had it too much in his head that this is just straight up a Moby Dick adaptation.
Yeah, and I think that they really didn't want it to be a Moby Dick adaptation.
Yeah.
And so they heard that and they were like, I don't
we can't.
Let's find somebody else to direct this. Spielberg was the producer's next choice, but the young director wasn't so sure about accepting the job. He wanted to do a different movie called Lucky Lady. He consulted Sid Sheinberg, the then president of Universal, and the man that would eventually be credited with discovering Spielberg. I remember I saw him say, he was like, it'll say on my tombstone that I discovered Steven Spielberg. He's like, I mean, I discovered him the way you discover a mountain, you know?
Yeah. Somebody was bound.
There it is.
Sheinberg told Spielberg that he should choose Jaws because it had the potential to be a big hit and to get his name out there. Spielberg was admittedly unhappy with the choice and had even asked Sheinberg why he made him do that, quote, fish movie. But Spielberg followed Sheinberg's advice, and at just 27 years old, he was helming the production of a large Hollywood film.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
And, he got into this incredibly difficult production. It was basically just filmmaking hell for so long, and he just was like, why did I do this?
Yeah, if he had known what was coming, with how frustrating it would be.
Yeah.
Hindsight is 20/20.
He would not. Yeah.
Yes. There was actually one point where he almost dropped out.
Oh,
and
really?
and the producers that had hired him caught wind. He was going to come over because he had heard some stuff that we'll get into later that made him be like, I'm good, actually. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And they hadn't started the production yet. So he was going to, and they caught wind that he was going to come over to tell them, like, this is it. And so the producers said they, kind of looked around, like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And they already had Jaws shirts printed.
Oh.
So they put the Jaws shirts on.
Oh my
So that when
gosh.
he came in and he saw the shirts, he just couldn't do it. He couldn't
amazing.
He couldn't quit. Oh my gosh. What a ploy.
Oh my gosh, the first Jaws merch, man.
He's so mean.
You want one? You want one, Steven? Here you go.
look.
Right off my back.
Yeah. I'm so excited we're doing this movie together.
It's gonna be great.
Of course, Jaws was a massive success and jump-started Spielberg's meteoric rise. Over the next several years, he would direct classics like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., and Jurassic Park, and Indiana Jones, and
Just
Schindler's
so
List.
many
absolute
more.
staples.
There's a whole bunch of movies.
Yeah.
BFG is pretty good,
Yeah.
everybody. If you're listening. All right, as we do, for those of you who have not seen this movie, here is a summary. It's summertime on beautiful Amity Island, a destination for vacationers and the home to a small population of islanders. Just before the beaches become crowded with visitors, a young woman is mauled to death in an apparent shark attack. Chief of Police Martin Brody attempts to close the beaches for fear of another attack, but the mayor of Amity refuses to let one freak event interfere with tourism. Suddenly, panic breaks out on the beach after a young boy is attacked and eaten by a shark in front of hundreds of swimmers. Brody calls on Matt Hooper, a young oceanographer, to organize a hunt for the shark. With a bounty on the shark's head, a local fisherman named Quint offers his services to kill the shark for $10,000. The three men set out to destroy the 25-foot great white shark.
Yeah.
What a horrible mayor.
I know. I hate him
Yeah.
so much.
Yep.
The worst.
He's the actual villain.
Truly. I mean,
He was like, but money.
right? It's like you're,
Yeah.
like you're gonna make it worse.
Yeah.
I
Not,
know.
not only will people die,
Yeah.
but then nobody will come back.
So now we're going to talk about how the movie was made.
Yes.
Carefully.
Yes.
Very
Moving on to
careful.
fun facts.
Yes. Tread carefully through
please.
this water.
Please, can we just have it be that?
Producers Richard Zanuck and David Brown had just found success with The Sting, a 1973 film starring Robert Redford and Paul Newman, when they brought the idea to adapt Peter Benchley's novel Jaws to Universal Pictures. As laid out in his contract, Peter Benchley penned the original screenplay for Jaws, but when filming began, the script wasn't up to Spielberg's standards. Spielberg started by removing subplots about the mayor of Amity and his ties to the mafia, and one plot about an affair between Matt Hooper and Martin Brody's wife.
Whoa.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Glad he took that out.
I'm glad he took those
Me
things
too.
out.
I don't need those.
It makes the plot a little too complicated and a little
Yeah.
too,
There's all
a
These
little
other
too
things.
murky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, one of the biggest pieces of Martin Brody and one of the reasons why audiences identify with him so much is because of the human element of his family
Yes.
Yeah.
and his wife and his kids. And so if there was an affair, that would have made it a very different movie.
Yeah, I would have hated that, to be honest.
Yeah, I would have too. He called in Carl Gottlieb, a TV writer, who agreed to help rework the script after filming began. Every night after shooting, Spielberg and Gottlieb worked on the scenes for the next day. This guy, so Gottlieb was a TV writer, and Steven Spielberg was like, I want you to help me because you know how to write comedy. And this movie needs to have an element of comedy. There needs to be funny lines. It can't just be kill
Straight
after
up horror.
kill.
Yeah.
Right.
There has to be, like a balance.
Yeah.
And so, he pulled in this writer who agreed to essentially live on this island with Steven Spielberg for a year. And they just lived in this little house together.
Yeah.
And every single night they just, sat down and they were like, oh, here's what we're going to shoot tomorrow. And which is a very scary thing to do.
Yeah.
Because, it's down to the line, but also it's hard to tell if what you're making is going to be consistent.
Cohesive.
Yeah.
Cohesive. It's hard to know when you're kind of working on the fly like that. Yeah. And this also is a huge testament to why writers are important and why you need to have writers on sets.
Yes.
Because if they didn't have this guy, if they didn't have Carl Gottlieb there, this movie wouldn't have been made.
Yeah.
Really, truly.
it wouldn't have. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's fine. Just punch it into the AI. It'll fix everything.
Yeah, just have the actors ad-lib every time, even if they're terrible at it.
Christ.
Oh, God. Having a screenwriter on hand to make changes during the production was immensely helpful. In one scene, the character Matt Hooper climbs into a metal cage and descends into the water to try and shock the shark. He's trying to stab him with a special tranquilizer.
It's like a wired harpoon of some kind.
Yeah. In the book, the character dies when the shark attacks Hooper's cage, killing and eating him. This was written into the script. A secondary crew was filming this sequence off of the Australian coast when a real shark swam over the cage, thrashing it and causing it to break. Luckily, the stuntman that was hired to stand in for Richard Dreyfuss as Hooper was not in the cage at the time. The footage was very compelling, but ultimately unusable with the current script. So Spielberg and Gottlieb changed the story. They used the footage in the film, but had Hooper escape the cage before the shark destroys it. Because of this, Hooper survives.
Yay!
Wow. That's very interesting.
Yeah, they said a great white shark rewrote our movie.
Oh man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
The phone calls, they called the producers and they were like, "We've got this great footage. We did it. We got it." Because this is again a horrible production. Nothing is working correctly.
Nothing is going right.
And the producer said his heart just fell because he's like, "I have to ask the next question, which is, was anybody in the cage?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "No." And he's like, "Well, cool, good, but
also
we can't use that."
Yeah.
Because if nobody's in the cage, then
continuity or whatever.
And they were like, "Oh," and then that's when they rewrote the movie so they could use the footage.
Yeah.
Because if he had been in the cage, he would have died.
Yeah.
The stuntman would have died.
IRL,
so honestly, it's better that he wasn't in it.
It's a good thing that he wasn't in the cage.
Yeah. And actually, I kind of forgot that because I think about the animatronic Jaws so much.
Yeah.
That I forget that there are some shots of a real shark.
Yeah.
In that moment, and it's just thinking about them, just they get that footage and they're like, "Whoa, check this out! This is perfect."
I know, once in a lifetime.
Watching it back, oh my god!
Especially because the shark was supposed to attack the cage, kind of anyway. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, but instead, it kind of got caught and just kind of freaked out.
Yeah. Played the part perfectly.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
So. Thank God that nobody was hurt.
I mean, yes.
It worked out. And
gracious.
it made it so Hooper could survive.
And it made it so Hooper survived. So I can watch this movie more than once.
Exactly. Finding the right actors for the main cast proved to be a challenge. Charlton Heston wanted to play Martin Brody, but Spielberg felt that he was too big and would upstage the shark. He offered the part to Robert Duvall, who ultimately turned it down. While trying to find his leading man, Spielberg had a chance encounter with actor Roy Scheider at a party. When he told Scheider about the film and his inability to find a proper lead, Roy asked Spielberg if he could play the part.
Yeah, he kind of was just like, "Well, dude, I'm
what
an
about
actor.
Me?
Yeah.
I'll do it."
Open thine eyes, bro. Yeah.
One of the biggest components of Brody's character is his family life. We see this reflected in several of the movie's scenes. In one scene, Brody's young son copies his father's mannerisms. Roy Scheider had noticed Jay Mello, the young boy playing his son, copying the older actor. It had been a particularly tough day of shooting, and Scheider showed Spielberg the sweet gesture. Spielberg filmed it, and it made the cut.
That's amazing that it was also a rough day of shooting.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, that was a horrible day.
Yeah. It was such a bad day.
Because it was the same day that the kid was
the day
killed.
Of the slap, I think. Or maybe,
one of them.
It was one of those days. He was completely at a loss because, this child had died and he's like, "This is my fault."
Yeah.
And, he has this mayor who's not letting him, do his job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is just going to get worse." And, and it's so sad. And this little boy is just like the absolute picture of innocence.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of being silly and just kind of doing everything that his dad is doing. And it's so sweet. it's such an important little moment in the movie because it forces the audience to kind of slow down and it's like it's the real life element of the story.
Yeah. I think this scene really showcases his family life the best out of all the different scenes of him and his family, because again, like you said, it makes you slow down and see like what his normal life would be like. And I think this is one of the major times when he actually interacts with one of his kids, because the other times I can think is he's yelling at them to get off the little like dinghy or whatever, the little craft that they have and stuff. But this one, I think it was that like he's right by his son and interacting right with him. Convincing Richard Dreyfuss to accept the role of Matt Hooper was an even bigger task. Spielberg wanted him for the part, but Dreyfuss said no because he correctly assumed that filming on the ocean would be, well, a logistical nightmare.
Oh, no.
There were a couple of things. One, he was like, it sounds like a flop. Sounds like it's not going to be very good. I don't really like the character very much. He doesn't seem very interesting.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. He was so against the part that Dreyfuss even tried to convince Spielberg to abandon the project as well.
Jeez, man.
He said, hey, man, how about we both don't do it? He said to him.
Let's just skip town. Let's go to Vegas.
Dreyfuss had recently starred in a Canadian film, and when he screened it, he felt that his performance was so bad that he would never work again. He promptly called Spielberg and begged him for a role in Jaws.
Oh my gosh.
Well, then, can you tell me if there's a good restaurant or hotel on the island?
You walk straight ahead.
They're all gonna die.
Robert Shaw rounded out the three main players as the enigmatic Quint, the surly seaman with a personal vendetta against sharks. Shaw was in The Sting before Jaws, and even though he wasn't Spielberg's first or even second choice to play the character, he delivered an iconic performance.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, truly. Yeah.
What an interesting difference.
Yeah.
It would have made. I can't imagine.
There were two other choices, and I can't remember their names, but the first choice was currently fishing, was currently on a fishing vacation.
Oh, wow. Hilarious.
And he didn't want to leave his vacation to work pretending to be a fisherman. He was like, I'm already fishing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
That's amazing.
So that was one of them.
Brother.
Okay.
The other one owed so much money to the IRS that he knew that if he did the movie, they would seize his funds from the movie. So he's like, basically, I'd be working for the IRS, and I'm good. I don't want to do that.
No.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that Robert Shaw was, obviously perfect.
Yeah, as it says, it's an iconic performance.
Yeah.
And his introduction is like just chilling, dude.
Yeah.
Not in like a scary way, obviously, but like the scratching, it just I can't compose myself during it. You know what I mean? It affects me so much.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I had a reaction to it too.
It's a physical, like, I can't stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There truly is not. There is not an introductory scene to a character that is more memorable.
Yes.
More referenced, parodied, more iconic than that moment.
I don't want no volunteers. I don't want no mates. There's too many captains on this island. $10,000 for me by myself. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
Shaw and Dreyfuss had an on-set feud that was partially reflected on screen as their characters clashed. Shaw was highly competitive, and he reportedly didn't think much of the young Dreyfuss, a brash screen actor with no stage experience. Dreyfuss later said that privately, Shaw was a kind man, but on set, it was almost like he was another person entirely.
Oh, boy.
They did not get along. And and when you're watching the movie, you can feel it's like almost palpable, the disdain for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, Richard Dreyfuss was this young, up-and-coming actor who was in lots of things. And one day he brought in a review. It was like a New York Times page with all these reviews for this movie that he was in.
Okay.
And Robert Shaw was competitive, and they said that he didn't like that very much. And so he would just kind of like gripe at him and just like say little things to him and try to like get in his head. One day, Robert Shaw, who liked to drink a lot, he had a shot in his hand.
Okay.
It was a shot glass filled with alcohol. And he was like climbing up the thing to get into the boat. And Richard Dreyfuss was standing right there. And he was like, I need you to help me. And Richard Dreyfuss said, you want me to help you? And he said, yeah. He was like, I need you to help me. And Richard Dreyfuss said, okay. So he took the shot glass from him and he just threw it off the boat. Just threw it through the window.
Oh my God.
And Steven Spielberg said that everybody on set that was a drinker just like... They all like tensed up.
Yikes.
And he was like, it got very ugly after that. That was like, that was the moment when it got really ugly. And so in the next scene, right after that, the next scene was the one where Brody and Hooper are trying to tie the ropes to the
cleats.
Yes, the shark is ripping the cleats off the boat and they're trying to hold onto it, and the water is like splashing on them.
Yeah.
And Robert Shaw is not in that scene. So they were filming that, and Robert Shaw walked behind the camera, picked up the hose, and blasted the hose right on Richard Dreyfuss during the scene.
Snap.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yikes.
But he was like, but privately, he was a wonderful guy.
I mean, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Just like, just once you're not working.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not so big, such a big deal. He just took his work very seriously.
The role really got him. Lorraine Gary, the wife of Universal president Sid Shiner, was cast as Ellen Brody, Martin Brody's wife. Spielberg felt that she created that warm, familiar vibe, which anchored Brody's character and helped the audience see themselves in him.
Yeah.
Locals were cast in the movie, which helped bring another element of realness. Alex Kinter, the shark's second victim, was played by 12-year-old Jeffrey Voorhees. He was a local kid with no acting experience. In order to make his death look real, a man pulled the child under the water and gave him oxygen until the scene was complete. Lee Fierro, who played Alex Kinter's grieving mother, lived on the island for many years before she moved to Ohio, where she passed away just a couple of years ago. In one of the film's most poignant and memorable scenes, she slaps Martin Brody in the face. Because of this, many fans of the film would ask her to slap them over the years. Which apparently she did. She slapped Roy Scheider like a lot lot of times to get the right
17 times.
in order to get the perfect take.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Chief Brody?
Yes?
I just found out that a girl got killed here last week. And you knew it. You knew there was a shark out there. You knew it was dangerous. But you let people go swimming anyway.
She said, too, because she was on the beach, and they're filming the scene where, the little boy gets eaten by the shark.
Yeah.
And in the movie, you can kind of see the shark, right? You see kind of like the top of its mouth. And then he kind of bites down on the raft, and then you see kind of this explosion of blood. I mean, it's just so much blood.
Yeah.
But she was sitting on the beach and watching it, because for the scene.
Yeah.
And she was like, I was horrified. Seeing it was very scary.
Yeah. Even knowing it's just a movie.
Fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, it was very intense. And that scene is so heartbrearting when like the bloody raft washes up on the shore.
Yeah.
That's
honestly, for me, it might be the hardest one to watch.
Yeah. They just really know what to do.
Yeah.
Because they give him just enough lines. Just enough.
Yep.
Just enough that you care about him.
Yeah.
Because you have this exchange with him and his mom. And she's like, you're getting all pruny. I need you you need to stay out of the water. And he's like, oh, come on, Mom. Just let me go back in.
Yeah.
And
she's
it's
like,
just
10 more minutes.
Yeah. And it's just, and then he gets killed.
More.
And it's so It's just, it's just enough. When producers Zanuck and Brown pitched Jaws, they assumed it would be shot on a tank on the Universal backlot. But Spielberg had other ideas. He felt that the unique texture of ocean water couldn't be replicated in a pool or a lake, so he insisted that they film on the actual ocean, something that no major Hollywood film had previously done.
Oh boy, and you know why.
Yeah.
He learned why pretty quickly.
Yes.
Production designer Joe Alvis was tasked with finding the right location to shoot Jaws. He was looking for an area that was not only picturesque and perfect for tourists, it also couldn't have big tides or too much current. His scouting mission took him to Martha's Vineyard, an island town that had enjoyed relative peace and obscurity until the film crews arrived. While on his scouting mission, Alves also discovered a fishing boat named the Warlock that he repurposed and renamed Orca. This became Quint's boat used in the film.
They reworked the boat a little bit to make it have more windows, so that way you could see, like, the ocean was always present. Instead of just having a little porthole or anything, they were bigger windows, so that way you could see
that makes sense.
The ocean that's pressing on you.
You get that feeling of like, if you can't see land, it's like they're on the shark's turf.
Yeah,
for real.
Exactly.
The boat stayed on the back lot for a couple of years after. Spielberg would sneak onto it every once in a while to reminisce until one day he noticed it was gone. It turned out that someone chopped it up for scrap wood because it had just been rotting on the lot.
Oh.
This truly upset Spielberg, but he was able to get both propeller blades back and the pilot wheel. A fiberglass version of this boat had been built to film the scenes of its sinking. Over the years, though, the fans snuck onto the private lot and stripped it of its features. It was affectionately called the Orca II. Also, in regards to the boat, there was a boat that all of the equipment was on, and it sank in the middle of the production. There was an accident of some sort.
Yep.
And so the ship started to sink rapidly.
Yeah.
And so the actors are on the boat, and Steven Spielberg is sending out boats to like get people off of it, and
the sound equipment.
Yes, and they said that there was a 70-year-old man on the boat with a $50,000 recorder, like a $50,000 sound recorder.
Yeah.
Spielberg's got the megaphone, and he's like, "Get the actors off the boat! Get the actors off the boat!"
Yeah.
And the sound guy holding the recorder above his head said, "Fuck the actors! Save the sound department!"
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude! If that were happening to me and I was holding up a super expensive piece of equipment, I'd be like, "Fuck it! I'll swim. Take this, please.
Take it.
Get this in a boat."
Finding the right location was only half the battle, as Alvis also had to design the film's main antagonist, a great white shark. He created sketches and models of the animal, and he called on Robert Matty, a retired production designer known for creating the squid in Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Matty attached the shark to a mechanical arm on a submersible platform. He was the mastermind behind the animatronic monster. All in all, the equipment it took to make the shark, affectionately named Bruce after Steven Spielberg's lawyer, weighed 12 tons.
I didn't know that tidbit. That's hilarious. I thought Bruce was just like a name they picked.
Nope.
That's very funny.
Nope.
Wow.
It fits, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, lawyers, sharks. And that reminds me, too, of the point that people make about the mayor.
Yeah.
It's a shark movie.
Okay.
But not all sharks are in the water, right? The mayor is the shark of the land. He's the antagonist of the land.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were 3 sharks in total. One was a left side, one was a right, and the other was a full body model. A typical large shark is about 12 feet, so Joe Alvis decided to roughly double that length to make the shark as formidable as possible. While Alvis made Bruce's skeleton out of chromoly steel tubing, studio sculptor Don Chandler made the clay mold. Luckily, these fit together perfectly.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
They kind of said, they were like, we were just kind of doing it and hoping it was going to work.
No,
it was going to fit
I
together.
I feel like that might have been the motto of this entire movie.
I think, I think you're right.
We were just kind of doing it and hoping it
Yeah. No script.
God.
We're just going to kind of wing it.
This obviously turned out as best as it possibly could.
Yeah.
But you know what? And even though they were kind of like, flying by and just trying things, Spielberg certainly paid the price.
Yeah.
For sure.
For this movie being a success, because this was so hard on him.
Yeah.
The residents of Martha's Vineyard were leery of a Hollywood film crew descending on their island during their peak tourism season, just like in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So Spielberg and the producers agreed to film mostly during their off-season time and hoped to be done by late June.
Oh boy.
The strict filming schedule was also influenced by an impending Screen Actors Guild strike. There was a contract dispute between SAG and studio executives. And because that contract was supposed to expire on June 30th, studios refrained from starting any projects that would not be completed by that June 30th deadline. But there was nothing to worry about because Jaws was expected to wrap before then. Right? Right?
Yeah. Sure.
Wrong. Filming for Jaws began in May of 1974 and ended in early October.
God.
Yeah, not
Close.
quite that. Yeah.
They might have overshot that
by a
deadline
hair.
just a little bit. Yeah.
Just missed it.
The reason for the extended shoot? Bruce, their star and title character, simply refused to work. That and the challenging conditions of shooting on the ocean. Like boats sinking. And after a while, peak season did start.
Yeah.
And there were constant sailboats and things. And you cannot have a shark movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then have people leisurely, sailing in the background.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you want a nice clean ocean behind you.
Yeah, and it just looks like people are just chilling and having a good time.
Yeah, like nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shark.
Right. What we see in the movie is essentially all the frames of usable footage of the shark. Because of this, Spielberg had to get creative with how and when to show the shark, building more suspense for the audience. Ultimately, it was a blessing that the shark did not work most of the time. It made them get more inventive and hold the reveal till the end.
I would guess kind of more widely known trivia of the production of Jaws is how originally there was supposed to be a lot more shark.
Right.
Yeah.
And because it didn't work, it made it so much more mysterious and
It's scarier.
scarier. Yeah. So it was, a blessing in disguise.
It really, Spielberg himself, the way he said it, perfectly wrapped it up. He said, it turned from being a Godzilla movie into a Hitchcock movie.
Yes.
Oh, right.
It did.
That's what happened, Yeah.
He also, in more recent interviews, has said, if this was made closer to today's time, CGI would have been a thing.
Dude, yeah.
And they would have just done CGI, and it would not have been a good movie. It wouldn't have. I mean, because he was supposed to be in that very first scene with Chrissy. Killing Chrissy.
He was.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a really gruesome scene.
Yeah.
And instead what they did was they had her attached to these ropes at the bottom. And there were 10 men on one side and 10 on the other, and they were just pulling her back and forth. And that's why she was being dragged like she was. And then the final pull underneath was Steven Spielberg. He alone did the pull to pull her down.
What just an absolutely spine-chilling opening.
Yeah.
I can't. It's kind of hard for me to watch still.
Yeah.
But it's
it's so good. It's so well written.
It's just
I just feel so bad. When she grabs the thing and she's
buoy.
there's a moment where it's it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay,
Yep.
And there is just an air, just a hint of comedy in the scene.
Yeah.
Where, the man basically
he
trips
falls
and he
asleep.
Immediately falls asleep on the
Passes
beach.
out,
He's so drunk.
Yeah.
And when it cuts to the scene where he's kind of leading the police to okay, I'm kind of looking for this girl. She's missing. I don't know what happened to her. But he's just so nonchalant about it. He's like, well, she probably drowned, you know, and it's like, and it kind of you see this you know, this apathy that like people kind of have, you know, until they discover the body, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oof.
In the end, production went over budget by 300%.
Good Lord.
With each passing day, Spielberg was convinced he would get fired and taken off the project. Studio executives were calling the producers and threatening to pull the plug, and according to Richard Zanuck, he kept these calls from Spielberg because he was already dealing with enough pressure. Even though he was ultimately grateful for Jaws, the director still looks back on it as, quote, the most unhappy time in my life as a filmmaker.
I think in some of the Jurassic Park behind the scenes, he's even said that. Because I remember something about he was doing Jurassic Park and Schindler's List kind of right at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, that's really rough. Every other director would be like, oh, I can't do two at once. But they haven't been through Jaws. You know what I mean? So it's like, I've already gone through hell.
Yeah, he's like, I did Jaws. I can do anything.
Yeah. As the days and weeks marched on, the cast and crew began to lose faith in the project. But after filming one very important scene, Spielberg and his team had a renewed sense of hope in the film. Spielberg and Gottlieb agreed that the character Quint, played by Robert Shaw, needed a compelling backstory as to why he had a personal vendetta against the shark. Spielberg called in playwright Howard Sackler to write a monologue wherein Quint recounts his real-life story of the ill-fated USS Indianapolis. The ship was sunk by a torpedo on its return trip to the U.S. base after delivering parts of the atomic bomb. Because the mission was top secret, there was no distress signal. The defenseless crew waited in the water for several days as sharks circled and attacked. This story was not made public for several years after the war ended and was relatively unknown. Some survivors of the USS Indianapolis expressed immense gratitude to the writers behind Jaws and Robert Shaw for telling their story.
Yeah, you know, one of them talked about how their son was like, "Oh, Dad, come, let's go see Jaws," and he was like, "Absolutely not. I don't want to see that movie." And he said, you know, this story was classified for a long time.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I didn't tell my family what I'd been through in the war, you know, so like my family like didn't know about these things, and my son was like, "Oh, let's go see it. You know, I think you're gonna like it," and I was like, "Okay, fine."
Okay.
So, you know, we went, and it was like that scene, it was incredibly emotional for me to see someone telling that story, because in a really popular mainstream movie. Yeah. Because it was like no one knew that happened. And for him to talk about us, you know, and for people to know about what happened to us, like that was, you know, it was really, really emotional. Yeah. It was really nice.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely a pivotal moment in the movie too. Because up to that point, we're like, who is this guy?
Yes.
You know?
He's just so colorful. Yeah. We don't really know anything about him.
Yeah. So we finally get it.
1,100 men went into the water. Vessel went down in 12 minutes. Didn't see the first shark for about half an hour. Tiger, 13-footer. You know that when you're in the water, Chief? You tell by looking from the dorsal to the tail. What we didn't know was our bomb mission had been so secret, no distress signal had been sent.
And how interesting the parallel too, because the parallel of a distress signal wasn't sent because of the top secret mission. And then Brody wants to send it out a distress signal, and
he refuses.
And he won't want to do it.
Whoa. Shaw filmed the monologue more than once. The first time they filmed, he had too much to drink and was having trouble even standing up. He called Steven Spielberg afterward and asked to do it again, this time completely sober. The version seen in the film is a combination of both those takes.
Oh, wow.
The film's producers initially hired Spielberg because they knew that he would have a fresh perspective and they were impressed by his ability to frame a scene. Many scenes were shot with a camera box. This was a clear, waterproof case that allowed cinematographer Bill Butler to film scenes at water's level. Spielberg really wanted the visual to be at the level of a person who is swimming, to give the audience the sense that the shark could be there among the legs of the unsuspecting people. Some of those shots are
tense.
Yes, is the word.
It's when I saw that, I truly thought that was the shark. That we were
seeing the
things
shark's view
from the perspective of the shark, but we're not. It's just that's just how they're filming the movie.
Yeah. And then also the scenes where it's like right at eye level where like they're swimming away, like you can see their faces clearly. One that I especially remember is the guy that goes and like pushes the young kids off of that floaty to get away.
The mom that picks up her child and holds her child in the water.
Yeah.
And you're just like, get out, get out.
Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing?
It's just this absolute panic.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and nobody's thinking clearly and you could see that panic.
Yeah.
The film is mostly a handheld camera film, which became a popular stylistic choice for thrillers.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. Spielberg wanted the audience to feel trapped in the water, as if the characters would not be able to make it to land and safety. Because of this, he was very precise in filming to make sure the shots did not show land.
When the shoot miraculously came to a close, Steven set up the final shot of the shark exploding in the water. He then boarded a plane and allowed the crew to finish filming the movie without him. He had heard that the crew intended to throw him in the water as the film wrapped, so he made sure not to be there. It then became kind of a tradition that he is never there for the last shot of a movie.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Bro!
Steven Spielberg first worked with John Williams on his directorial debut film, The Sugarland Express. During that time, they became friends, and Spielberg says that he wanted Williams to do every movie he made.
Of course he did.
I mean, he practically has.
I mean,
he's done a lot of them.
The theme, it's basic, animalistic, and unforgettable.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, yeah. Everybody knows it.
It's anxiety the theme.
It is.
It's iconic among icons.
Yes.
When John Williams was asked by Spielberg what he planned to do for the shark, Williams played a simple EF, 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 DF. Spielberg apparently replied with something like, "You can't be serious."
I am, Steven.
Yes, exactly. At that time, the pair did not know each other super well, and Spielberg thought that Williams may be pulling his leg.
John Williams is known for these sweeping orchestral scores.
Yeah.
And so for him to do something so different
exactly
like
that's exactly what Spielberg thought he was going to do. He thought it was going to be something kind of a little mysterious, a little, and then it's just he played it on the piano like that, and it was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean,
what?
I mean, obviously the orchestra does get involved in the theme, but man, the two notes is just, it's unreal, dude.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's the king of the leitmotif.
Yes. Using these simple notes, Williams brought Jaws to life. The notes being versatile change the urgency and fear by being played slow, fast, quiet, or loud.
Mm-hmm. You can always tell when the shark was closer based on the way the music's playing.
Yeah. Absolutely. The American Film Institute ranked Jaws as the 6th greatest film score of all time.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now we're just going to talk a little bit about how this film was received.
Yeah.
I'd wager quite well.
Yeah. There have been many copycat films, but Jaws has stood the test of time. It was a worldwide hit. Television ads truly helped to hype up the movie, which was not a common thing to do. Percy Rodriguez voiced the trailers. His voice was the first to introduce people to what would become a phenomenon.
It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
During the 3 nights before release, Universal had all major networks run ads, which cost $700,000, but was well worth it.
Man, oh man, that's piddly for today's advertising. budgets.
But then it was quite a bit.
I mean,
75,
yeah.
It was released in over 400 theaters. It could have been more, but Lou Wasserman, chairman at Universal, wanted people to have to travel and go to specific theaters. He thought the best advertisement was a long line, hence the term blockbuster. This ensured that Jaws would stay in the theater all summer long. By this time, most theaters were air-conditioned, so it was easier to see a summer movie and not sweat.
Very nice.
Yes. And this was a very new concept. Wide releases was very new.
Mm-hmm.
They did it with The Godfather, but they didn't put in 400 theaters. This was like one of the biggest wide releases that had ever happened because, you know, it was a brand new thing to do a little. They would do just a couple of screenings here and there.
Okay.
Get the people talking.
Yeah.
And then one big wide release. Hundreds of theaters across the country.
Yeah.
And now that's what they do all the time. Jaws won Oscars for Best Sound, Best Musical Score, and Best Editing.
Woo! As it deserved.
Yes. Shortly after filming Wrapped, Carl Gottlieb recounted the extraordinary year-long ordeal of filming Jaws in a book called The Jaws Log. It was originally supposed to have perspective of at least 3 people, including Spielberg, but it ended up being only Carl Gottlieb's because they all were too busy. He wrote it in only about a month, and it was originally published in 1975. So it's like fresh.
Yeah.
Fresh information. Many popular filmmakers like Kevin Smith and Steven Soderbergh credit Jaws as a film that inspired them to make movies. The film inspired hundreds of films and launched the tradition of the summer blockbuster.
We talk about Jurassic Park a lot on this show, and I apologize. But, you know, in the episode, we talked about how it changed the way movies were made.
Yeah.
In that it kind of brought the CG to the forefront and made, you know, it was like these things are now possible, right?
Yeah.
But arguably, Jaws changed the whole mentality around what it means to be a movie and what it means to be a blockbuster.
Yeah.
You know, obviously this movie was out for a while before Jurassic Park came around. So it's like, it was the true turning point for Hollywood and big movies. All right, everybody, we're moving on to the fun facts.
We did it. We're at Fun Facts.
Which means we're getting to the end, baby. After this humongous episode. Steven Spielberg used a specially designed clapboard that had teeth.
Yeah, when you do like the marker, you know, you do the clapboard.
Cute. Yep. Author Peter Benchley is in the film as a TV reporter on the beach.
Yeah.
Nice little cameo.
Yeah,
there.
he's got those big glasses and he, you know.
Carl Gottlieb is also in the movie as a reporter.
Yes,
nice.
That's right. He
was
is
supposed to have a bigger role, but they cut it out.
Steven Spielberg also made a sneaky appearance. His voice can be heard over the radio on the Orca.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
His dog Elmer appears as the Brody family dog.
Aww.
Adorable.
That is adorable. Some inspiration for the story came from a New York Daily News article about a fisherman who caught a 2-ton, 5.5 meter long shark off the coast of Montauk, Long Island in 1964.
That is a huge shark.
That is massive.
So big.
The Jersey Shore shark attacks in July 1916 and the documentary Blue Water, White Death, 1971 also contributed.
Yeah. There were some real life elements. We've talked about that because we did an episode about that.
We did,
sure did.
Yes.
After Spielberg and Gottlieb did extensive work on the script, the character Matt Hooper evolved into somewhat of an alter ego for Steven Spielberg.
That's why we like him so much.
Very
Honestly,
yes.
you know.
One of the most memorable scenes, because of its jump scare, is when Hooper and Brody find Ben Gardner's boat. When Hooper dives into the water to investigate, Gardner's severed head pops out from the bottom. This scene was actually filmed in a swimming pool. Coincidentally, it was in the pool of the film's editor, Verna Fields. They poured milk into the pool to give it a murky look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gross.
Yeah, he actually added this after that Dallas screening.
Yes.
Because
really?
yeah,
Yes.
he wanted one more scream. He said he wanted one more
Like
fright, one more jump.
Oh man. Any final thoughts on Jaws, you guys? I mean, just the fact that it was so big for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an influential movie. I mean, we told you every reason why.
Yeah.
And there's still more besides that. It's a staple of cinema in a way, like we said earlier, how it's kind of weaved into everything at this point.
Right.
There's so much merchandise. There's so many references to it. It's in everyone's mind. Like if you were to put together like a montage of the best movies ever, Jaws is going to be in there.
It's unbelievably entertaining. The storytelling is really good. I can forgive a sad scene. I can forgive a death.
Right.
Yeah.
I can forgive something gruesome if it's well written and it's really good for the story. Like, God, it's so hard to see some of those parts, but also at the same time, you know, there's this fulfilling feeling you get, you know, when you can feel that it's a good story and you can feel how this affected me deeply because the storytelling was so good and effective. And I love it. I love the movie. I understand why people are obsessed with it. Yeah. Because there's nothing like it.
No.
There never will be anything like this.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just one of a kind in the way it looks and the way it was made. You know, I love Steven Spielberg's movies so much. And like some of my favorite movies of all time are Steven Spielberg movies. Yeah. And I just don't think those would have existed if this movie didn't exist.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. It really came together. The art for it, the music for it, the shots that they were able to get. It just,
against all odds.
Good. Against all odds, it all came together.
Odds, you know, it's a bit of a miracle film.
Truly.
Yeah. Jaws is easily one of the most popular films ever made. Still today, many fans aren't shy about their love for the adventure thriller that launched Steven Spielberg's career. Some will even go so far as to say that it's a perfect movie. This is a film that tapped into the fears of its audience in the most accessible way possible. It has just enough of those delicious elements of a horror film, moments of adrenaline that jumpstart your heart and remind you that you're alive. Those experiences are peppered into a familiar tale of man versus beast that's driven by Martin Brody, a relatable character who was thrust into this epic story without his consent. But since he's there, he does the thing that everyone watching wishes they could do. He kills the damn shark. There are a lot of reasons why this movie might not have worked. It was helmed by an inexperienced director in some of the most frustrating filming conditions possible. Universal could have pulled the plug any time, and few would have blamed them. But they didn't. And even though filming conditions made the project difficult, the choice to film Jaws on the ocean ultimately turned out to be a great one. It gave the film a unique sense of realism that will likely never be replicated. So if you've never seen Jaws, we suggest you give it a try, or perhaps a nibble. It's a great film to sink your teeth into. Yay!
Wow.
Nice. Great.
All right.
Okay. Yes, that was a great. Yeah. With that, that's a case closed.
All right.
Woo! Did it. All right. So we'd like to thank Patreon, all of our lovely patrons. We got Jacob, John, JD, Bob, Shelly, and Anthony.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We truly appreciate you.
You're the best.
You guys rock.
Yes, you do.
Also, visit blackcasediaries.com for other episodes, other content. We will have another episode this month, at least one more,
at least
possibly
one more.
two.
I would recommend going back to, what was it, like season 6?
It was a couple seasons ago.
A couple seasons ago when we did talk a little bit about Jaws along with
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street and Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
So,
we'll make a link to that in the blog if you want to just look at the blog for this, and we'll get you there. So.
All right.
All right. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
From the best-selling novel, Jaws, rated PG, maybe too intense for younger children.